Hi, welcome. My name is Jody Hobbs. I'm here with Maia Szalavitz. We're going to do a podcast and talk a little bit about Maia and the advocacy work she's done as far as institutional abuse goes. And I wanted to ask you, Maia, welcome, first of all. Thank you so much. Can you just tell us a little brief synopsis of who Maia is for the people that don't know?
Sure. In this context, I am the author of Help at Any Cost: How the Troubled Teen Industry Cons Parents and Hurts Kids. And it was the first book length expose of the troubled teen industry, which encompasses programs like boot camps, emotional growth schools, therapeutic boarding schools, wilderness programs, and behavior modification programs, anything that tries to apply tough love to troubled teens.
Right. Okay, well, what I first want to know, the first question I want to ask you is what prompted you to actually write Help at Any Cost?
Well, I was a drug addict in my 20s,
Hmm.
and I had heard that treatment involves humiliating, attacking, and all this group activity that sort of aimed at breaking you down. And since I was basically terrified of people and was using drugs to like feel comfortable,
Hmm.
um, the idea that treatment was going to be social attacks was basically my worst nightmare. And I thought that would make me want to do drugs. It wouldn't make me want to get into recovery. So, what is going on there?
Yeah.
And so I avoided getting help for a while. And after I finally did, fortunately, avoiding most of the worst of it, I wondered whoever came up with that stupid idea and why is it so prevalent in addiction treatment?
Yeah.
And while I was researching that, I found that it had sort of migrated from the adult addiction industry to programs for teenagers.
Hmm.
And I began looking at this and hearing people's horror stories of what had happened to them. And there were a lot of there was a lot of journalism about it that looked at, this one program is bad or this one person is bad or this one employee is bad, but nobody put it all together and nobody was really getting that in these programs the abuse is the so-called treatment. They thought it was just, some bad apples or one bad program or things like this. They didn't realize that the selling point of these places is they're going to break the person's personality and then fix them.
Hmm.
And that this concept itself is flawed and causes post traumatic stress disorder and a lot of other problems.
Yeah, not only post traumatic stress disorder, but complex post traumatic stress disorder and severe
Yeah.
depression and all of those things, contributing to that severe trauma that the individual,
Well, and what's really terribly ironic is that this is supposed to prevent drug use, but it actually fuels drug use and actually causes addiction in some cases. Like some people who went into these programs and did not have addiction problems come out of them and do. And, I mean, it's just awful. And I felt like, I knew that I couldn't have survived something like that. I admire the survivors who managed to make it through. I didn't want to see anybody else have to go through that. And I just thought, why are we letting people profit from making massive amounts of harm, doing massive amounts of harm to people? Why do we allow people to profit from selling abuse as treatment that doesn't work and that harms families?
severely harms families. I mean, I get calls almost every day from survivors who, their family is broken up. They don't talk to their parents, or they have a hard time with that specific relationship. I think, for me, I've been able to reconcile my relationship with my parents, thankfully, but that was not without a lot of hard work on both parts, and a lot of, my mom had to admit, that what she did caused me harm, and I'm sure that was, hugely difficult for her, because she obviously wanted to protect me. And most parents do, and these programs kind of prey on that. And I think that's a good point to discuss. Is that family dynamic is broken, and some kids feel like their parents put them there deliberately and knew of the abuse and did nothing, and where other parent or other children feel like their parents were deceptively marketed to, and then they didn't know because the individuals that were in the programs, were scared to come forward and say what had happened because of all what they had told us in the program. So you have that dynamic that, for me, it's just heartbreaking because I want so much for these survivors to heal and have a very productive and happy life. And when I hear these tragic stories, it just breaks my heart. It just breaks my heart for them. Um, so
Really,
go ahead.
yeah, sure. It really is worth noting that one of the cruelest and most horrifying things that happens in these programs is that they tell the parents to expect false reports of abuse and to not believe them.
That's right.
And the children then are faced with, my parents don't believe me, they believe my abusers. And this creates a tremendous amount of harm. It destroys relationships that should be healing.
Yes.
And, I've definitely heard from many survivors who, never talk to their parents again, or who must avoid this subject because the parents
Yes.
still believe that they did the right thing.
Well, not only that they did the right thing, but that they were acting in the best interest of the child. And some of these places use escort services or transport services that wake the kid up in the middle of the night and just show I mean, that's tantamount to kidnapping, and and it feels as such, right? And so the child not only is traumatized at that moment, but then when they get to the program, they find out that their parents, put them in this program and they're going to be there for a long stay, and that's equally as traumatizing because that breaks the trust, obviously, for the child.
Well, and
So,
also, I
yeah.
mean, in the criminal justice system, people have a certain amount of sentence, like they're sentenced to X number of years.
Hmm.
And while that may be a scary number of years, at least you know.
Yeah.
Because these places you don't know, and they prey on the way uncertainty causes stress for people, and that's part of why it creates complex post-traumatic stress disorder, because uncertainty, powerlessness, hopelessness are essential to that condition.
Yeah, and that's exactly how you feel. I remember when my parents they sent me the day after my 17th birthday. So I knew that I was going to be there minimum amount a year. I just knew that right off the bat because I knew that I was going to stay until I was 18 because that's just the condition that my family dynamic was in, and I knew that it was a year-long program that I was going to stay there longer. But in the facility, and many like the facility that I was at, the kids are sent there, as young as 11, 12 years old, and they stay there for years. And this is during the time where a child's development, social skills, is so crucial. And when you miss out on things like, and it seems really simple and, oh, that's so silly, but missing out on things like proms or going out on a date or having best friends or, things of that nature that just kind of guide you into adulthood,
Well, and those things are not trivial. I mean,
yeah,
you know, when adults get together and reminisce about high school, they talk about prom. They talk about their first girlfriend and their first boyfriend and their first
yeah.
date and what a disaster it was.
Hmm.
You need to have that time to make mistakes, to connect with people, to learn how to make friendships, to learn how to build relationships. And when you are stuck in a situation where you are told the only way for you to go home and get out of this situation is to attack other people's weak spots and humiliate them, this does terrible things to your development.
Absolutely. And it changes you as an individual because you learn how to work the system. And you learn how to manipulate, and that's just all part of it. I mean, you have to do that in order to survive, and you have to throw people under the bus, and it's just horribly. I there was times when I was at the place that I was at that I would just cry myself to sleep because of the things that I saw and the things that I had to do. And even today, I have nightmares about that. So I just want to say, personally, from me, a survivor, thank you so much for all of your advocacy, all of your hard work in exposing institutional abuse and bringing it to the forefront. And, your article, and I use it all the time, the article about Tough Love, the program that spawned the troubled teen industry. That was such a powerful article because you seem to be able to frame this in such a way that is understandable and digestible, because a lot of people, they don't want to see the ugly. They don't want to see that we're doing this here in the United States, that it's prevalent, that it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and you have framed it in such a way that's palatable, that people can easily understand and digest. And for me, that's just a part of creating that change, that dynamic of change, so that we can change the culture, right? And hopefully, not have this therapy, and I say that term so loosely because it's not therapy. So I just want to say thank you. And I know that other survivors that will be listening to this, I know if they had the opportunity to talk to you, they would say thank you so much too. So I just, on behalf of the survivors that I know, thank you so much for all of your advocacy and hard work. I wanted to also ask you one specific question. When you were writing Help at Any Cost, was it I understand it would probably be a learning process for you, but was it a healing process for you as well?
It was actually quite painful because I had to digest a lot of people's pain.
Yeah.
And obviously it was nothing like actually going through it.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be able to just listen. And a lot of times I was the first person that had ever believed them about what had occurred.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to be there with them. And that's not easy.
Right.
Obviously, again, it's nothing compared to actually having that experience, but you do end up taking in a lot of pain. So that was hard. It was healing for me in the sense that afterwards, it clearly helped people. And I, as a former person with a drug addiction, like I was always feeling like I was useless and that I was like harmful or bad. And so to be able to actually help people was like, yay. So that in that sense, it was very healing. And I also felt like for the people who told me their stories, just being believed was kind of a gift. And I wanted to be able to do that, and I was able to do that. And that that was really nice, because when you see somebody else get better, it's good for you too. So all of that was really intense, and I was very lucky in that I had previously worked with a amazing doctor who works with child trauma. So I was sort of informed about what some of the issues are. And I was actually just on the phone with him before. He and I are probably working on the book together, which I'm psyched about. But he's an amazing, amazing person, and he really taught me an enormous amount about what trauma is, what it does to you, how do you help people who have it, and how do you communicate about it. Because one of the things that is definitely the case with traumatic experience is that it is not a coherent narrative. It is just scattered, and your memory becomes very weird. And like I did not have any hugely traumatic experiences other than being bullied as a kid, which was not especially fun, but was not extremely traumatic. But I think because my father was a Holocaust survivor, I was kind of attuned to trauma issues.
I did not know that. Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So, and I mean, so I think, like growing up that we didn't, we talked about it not often, but, just growing up, with somebody who'd been through that, one of the things I discovered when I was working on my current book actually was that the things that my dad had gone through specifically were exactly the things that I am most terrified of. And I don't know how I picked that up. If he said something at some point when I was a kid or whatever, but it's just like I am terrified of like claustrophobic places with people. And he was like on a train packed in with
Ugh.
like, and I'm like scared of like not being able to have access to a bathroom. And there, of course, was no access to a bathroom in that situation. And, so it was just really, kind of eerie.
Yeah.
Um, and, I don't know, the idea that people could think that doing harmful things to other people will help them just really infuriates me.
Me
And
too.
so
Me too.
I wanted to expose this and I wanted to say, like, just because, like, maybe my father grew from having been through that horror, does not make the Nazis good.
No, exactly. Exactly.
So the idea that we should traumatize people to help them is just crazy.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to, try in my own little way to make a difference and get people to see, what the problems are here and hopefully get the survivors' voices out there more so that this doesn't happen again.
Yes. Yes. Well, I am just so thankful for you. So thankful for you. I was just brought tears. So I wanted to talk to you about your new book. Can you tell us just a little bit about it?
Yes, so it is called Unbroken Brain, and it is partially a memoir of my addiction and partially an argument that we should see addiction as a learning or developmental disorder.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is that addiction, 90% of addiction tends to happen in the teens and early 20s. And there's a reason for that. Like other developmental disorders like schizophrenia or autism or ADHD, they all come on at specific times. Like schizophrenia, it's late adolescence, early adulthood, ADHD is early childhood. That's because those are specific times when the human brain is developing in a specific way.
Yeah.
And the task of adolescence and early adulthood is learning to have mature sexual and friend relationships.
Hmm.
And what happens in addiction basically is that you fall in love with the drug. And that means that you will persist despite negative consequences because you need to persist despite negative consequences in relationships. And you need to do that when you are parenting. If you do not do that, you will not have any relationships.
Yeah.
But if you do that in pursuit of a drug, you will seem crazy and you will seem selfish and you will seem as though you are persisting despite punishment.
Hmm.
And that means that you are not learning from punishment. And so by emphasizing the learning piece of it, I wanted to say, first of all, that your brain isn't broken. Like when you fall in love, you don't break your brain. You may feel like it when you break your heart,
Right.
but you still mostly get over it.
Hmm.
And what happens is that it's a specific type of learning that's very hard to unlearn, as anybody who's ever been broken up with knows. But you eventually get over it.
Yeah.
And vast majority of people with addiction actually are over it by age 30. But the people that we see in addiction treatment have chronic cases that last longer. And overwhelmingly, they either have severe child trauma or mental illness or developmental disorders or both.
Hmm.
And so we need to understand how you learn addiction, how you unlearn it, and how it unfolds during development. So I tried to use my own story, which is a very weird story, but to say that all of these stories are weird, that like everybody's experience is unique. And I probably would have been diagnosed with Asperger's if I was growing up. Now I was like incredibly had serious social difficulties as a kid and all the sensory stuff that people with autism talk about.
Yeah.
So, that's a slightly odd path.
Right.
You know, in the autism community, they say if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. You should be saying the same about addiction. If you've met one person with addiction, you've met one person with addiction. You cannot speak universally about addiction the way people do. All addicts do this, all addicts no. Like it would be like saying all white people do this. It's
Mm-hmm.
not. I can't speak for other people in terms of saying these universal things. And we have done this, and we have made it look like there's a one true path to recovery, and that there are things that must be done, and we have completely failed to deal with it. Especially because we keep thinking that shame and punishment is going to fix it,
Mm-hmm.
and addiction's defined as compulsive behavior despite punishment. So
Right.
if punishment worked, it wouldn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's basically what it's about, and I will be very happy when it comes out in April.
I am super excited. I can't wait to get it and read it. And of course, I'm hoping that I'll get a signed copy from you. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. Do you have anything you want to say before we end?
No, I'm really grateful to have met the survivors that I've met, and to have, been a part of this community. I think, however horrific the stuff that you guys have been through was, like, the people I've met have been really, really wonderful. And, I want you guys to be able to stop this from happening to other people.
Well, that's the plan. I'm really, looking forward to the future. I mean, you look at what happened with President Obama banning solitary confinement in June. Yes. Oh, I was just so excited about that because I see that as a very positive step towards change. And it might be a baby step, but it's a step nonetheless. And, for those that are in federal prisons, it's a huge, I mean, it's like somebody is saving them. Because I've been in isolation
So,
and it changes you. It changes you as a person, especially being a child. And
there's
I am so thankful. I was when I heard the news, I was just so elated because it's just one more step towards that positive change. So I think we'll just go ahead and end on that. Positive change, moving towards the future, and the legislation that we have in place. So I think we're in a very positive place right now, and I just really thank you for coming on, talking to us, and telling us about your new book, and and I just really appreciate you and value you and I feel like you're my friend. So I thank you so much for everything that you do, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
yes, likewise. Thank you so much.